Hello everyone, thank you for joining our session, Keeping Wonderland Open, Making the Arts Accessible in VR. I'm Toby Coffey, Head of Digital Development at the National Theatre in London, and I would like to welcome the other panellists. Carthy?
Hi, I'm Carty Price. I'm Head of Digital Media and Publishing at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London.
Hi all. My name's John Kaplan and I'm Associate Creative Director at PRELOADED.
Hi everyone, I'm Shinran Yuan, Head of Global Partnerships for HTC VIVE Arts.
In this session, we will talk about virtual reality in the arts, while focusing on the VR experience, Curious Alice, developed to accompany the V&A's major exhibition, Alice, Curiouser and Curiouser, which explores the origins of Alice in Wonderland. To start the session, we'll now play a short trailer for the VR. So, Alice in Wonderland is most definitely a story world that comes back time and time again in both creative and technical innovation. Carty, why do you think that is?
Well, firstly, just to give a bit of context to that, Toby, back in the 60s, I think it was Ivan Sutherland, when he was talking, the computer scientist, when he was talking about what became a blueprint for VR. Back then, he was talking about this imagining of other worlds and how technology can create other worlds. And he used Wonderland as the sort of paradigm to help explain that. And I think it's just been a really useful way to frame what technology can do, what it can achieve, how it can create other worlds. And I think you can see with any sort of change and advancement in technology, you can see Wonderland being used as the vehicle by which we explain what that might look like, how it might feel to be in other worlds. And that's something we've tried to draw on for our new exhibition, Alice, Curiouser and Curiouser, which is opening at the V&A when we open our doors in May, which I hope you'll all be able to attend. And we've actually created a VR experience within the exhibition, so a world within a world that allows people to enter into the world of Wonderland. So really understanding how VR can be used in the context of the exhibition to help people really feel like they're tumbling down the rabbit hole.
John, so PRELOADED is the agency that the V&A collaborated with on this experience. Could you help us understand what the audience experience will be and just more detail about the project in itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So our aim was to create a VR-only experience. And by that, I mean not having to worry about the constraints of the real world, like gravity, scale, and time even, and really immerse the audience into the experience. And what better source material than this, Alice in Wonderland itself. So taking on the role of Alice, you begin the experience in the Hall of Doors, and it's from here that you get to interact with the story's famous drinking bottle. It shrinks you down in size and it allows you to pass through a small doorway at the ends of the hall, taking you into the Queen of Hearts garden. And it's here that the real meat of the experience can be had by having a game of croquet with the Queen of Hearts herself. It's a game of skill, and it's tied thematically into the concept of the final authority, and it's in direct reference to chapter 18 in Alice in Wonderland book. So you're placed in this lush garden. It's a rich environment with pink flamingos walking around and across the croquet lawn, and playing cards marching about the place. In front of you is a basket with hedgehogs that can be picked up and thrown through the hoops of cards. The experience progresses as you score points, and in doing so, you're gradually angering the queen, and it results in a cry of "off with her head," and a house of cards is built up around you, and you, as Alice, have to break out of this house of cards by growing in size after eating a mushroom. And the experience ends with a final lingering quote of "you're nothing but a pack of cards." Now, the whole experience is wrapped in a wonderful commissioned piece of musical score. We have voice acting for the characters that you meet, and we've used the rich, detailed work of Christiana Williams' illustration work, transforming it from that 2D medium into this 3D VR world. And as we were in production, we were given the exciting opportunity with VIVE Art's support to add a further at-home experience for anyone to play. And working closely with the V&A, it adds a further 2 chapters to the experience. We've got the Rabbit's House, which riffs off the books The Rabbit Sends in a Little Bill, and it's a physical-based game of hide and seek with the rabbit's glove, and it wraps in this theme of curiosity and time. And the other being an encounter with the caterpillar, which is more of a mental-based activity as you solve riddles by combining multiple objects with the themes of introspection, change, and identity. That's a whistle-stop overview of the VR experiences that we've been creating for the exhibition, and what an adventure and joy it was to work on.
And how long is the audience experience itself? Like how, or is that, is that determined by how active the person is?
Yeah, so it's about 5 to 6 minutes long in length. And I mean, that is one of the considerations when you're building an experience for exhibition space. You've got things like dwell time. So as you're designing that experience, you need to be thinking about how you can progress the user on naturally. So we use things like timers to help move the viewer through the experience. And understandably, the at-home version doesn't have that kind of set of timers to it.
Sure. So this is a question for everyone, but I'd just like to come back to John first of all, which is, what are the constraints and opportunities in presenting work in this way? So the type of work that you're making in a setting like the V&A?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the opportunities is bringing this technology to a much wider audience. So, you know, you can think about the age range of people that are going through the exhibition. It may be the first time that they've ever experienced VR, and that's super exciting. And with that in mind, you have to think about what the experience is, the comfort level. We use these principles of low threshold, so it's got to be understandable, diegetic, you know, not too much kind of UI text trying to explain things, but it feels very natural. Mm-hmm. And then this other principle of wide walls and high ceilings. So emergent behaviors, for example, I can reach out and touch a pink flamingo and it reacts to me. Or I might pick up the paintbrush and start painting flowers, and there's those surprise and delight moments. And as we've already mentioned, it's things like dwell time and on rails and times, etc.
I think for us, we have a section in the exhibition around being Alice, and for us, VR presented this amazing opportunity to actually feel like you're in Alice's shoes. And there's this really visceral feeling of tumbling down the rabbit hole as you enter into the experience, and playing also with the sense of scale, which obviously is, as everyone knows, used to great effect within the book itself, but actually helping people understand what that might feel like when you're in Alice's shoes, and also to have that agency, as John says, to be able to poke flamingos and throw hedgehogs. There aren't many technologies that can really give you that sense of being there and experiencing what this weird and wonderful world of Wonderland might be like. So for us, that was absolutely the biggest opportunity.
It is the dream brief. Sorry. I was just going to say, it is the dream brief for a VR developer, is to imagine how you can put audiences into Wonderland. Sorry, Shinran. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just going to echo what John said about the idea of a threshold. I think for us, the challenge and opportunity lies in kind of how do you present something that feels very authentic in a museum, that offers that threshold of, you know, getting to know Alice's story and immersing in this story gradually in this architectural space, versus being on the platform and needing to experience that standalone experience, and not only by an art audience, but by the pro gamers experience, and still feeling engaged enough, and also feeling what we try to present loyally to an arts and cultural audience.
Yeah, and that sense of not bolting it on. I know, Kati, when we were talking about this, it's like, where was that experience going to sit? And it is sat in the main flow of the exhibition itself. It's complementing the experience because it's using elements of the illustration through that experience. So it feels very joined and flowing. So really integrating that technology into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was part of our brief, is to think about how we could make sure that the VR experience felt baked into the overall experience design of the exhibition. And that was something HTC was really concerned about. We were thinking about from a visitor experience and visitor flow perspective, and we were thinking in overall sort of narrative terms, how to make sure it really felt integral and a core part of the experience. So that was some of the design parameters that we were working with right from the beginning. And it feels like we really cracked that. It feels like the exhibition wouldn't be what it is without this as a core part of the experience.
That's really great. And it is always tempting sometimes for people to just present digital as a standalone thing. And actually it tells a much better story when it's part of other tactile kind of elements and experiential elements, I think. So do you think this is something that creating a piece of VR is something that you'll do again as part of a major exhibition?
I would say it came with the generous support of HTC VIVE Arts, and I think having a really collaborative relationship with Shinran and colleagues such as Selena, that really helped us think very broadly about what could be. We didn't have many or any constraints other than a desire to see where VR might enhance the experience. So I think being able to work in a very collaborative way with HTC and with PRELOADED was core to making a success. And I don't think you always get such a great combination of partners involved in a project. Often there can be lots of constraints to work around. So I would say, yes, we would absolutely be open to doing this again with the right partners and with the right narrative context. I think it felt like such a brilliant fit. And that's not always the case with every exhibition. So I think we don't start with thinking about VR and work backwards from that. We think instead about what's the story we're trying to tell and where might technology play a role in helping us to tell that story. That's for us is the sort of better entry point into making decisions about the role and place for technology within the experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so important, hugely important. We talk about form from content all the time. If someone's just looking to make a piece of VR that's not interested, and if somebody's realized that VR is the way for them to tell a story that they couldn't do otherwise, then that's where you create really, really meaningful work. We've got about 10 minutes left, and we're going to leave a few minutes for questions from the audience. So if anybody does have questions in the audience, then please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll come to them at the end. It is rather difficult to ignore the 12 months that we've just had, and if we can touch a little bit on how you found working creatively and collaboratively in the constraints that have come through this year.
Yeah, so it's adapting work patterns and work methods. I mean, everyone, as when we went into lockdown, we had to set up on kitchen tables and dining room chairs, etc., and working what that kind of ebb and flow of the process was. But working with Kati and Kate and her team at the V&A and HTC, and having regular check-ins, hangouts, having playthroughs that were streamed over Hangouts, so that we could say, oh, could you just look over there, and someone in the headset would look at the art objects. That's how we kind of brought this all together. And then things like, how do you do play testing. So grabbing like people that you've got in your household that would, again, maybe have never used VR before. My family now actually know what I do for a living. And that's been, that's kind of explained to them what I actually do. So that's great. But yeah, it's just been being adaptive and just, yeah, changing working patterns, but really detailing out the design of the experience. As we all know with VR, it's an iterative process, but really taking Carty and Kate and her team through that process, and again, then feeding into that. And it was, you know, we came to it together rather than a kind of top-down approach.
I think we've, something that I found is that the constraints of last year have been a real catalyst for conversations about digital and interactive work that have been around for a while, but then people have realized the importance of them. Which has led to new kind of ways in which audiences interact with audiences or communicate, audiences interact with organizations. I'm just wondering, from the V&A's perspective, has there been any kind of, what's the relationship with audiences been like with the V&A? Is it something that you found that people really value communication from cultural organizations at this point in time?
Absolutely, and I think we found the behaviour over the last year changes from depending on which lockdown we were in and what people were, what type of exchange they wanted with cultural organisations. But we found that because we'd always put a big emphasis on creating compelling online content, we had a bank of brilliant content to start with that people had a new reason to revisit or visit for the first time. We were seeing people engage with that in very different ways. People were liking the frivolous fun stuff. They were liking the weighty serious stuff at the same time. So we luckily have a range of content that appeals to lots of different types of audiences with different knowledge, different levels of knowledge and different types of interests. But what we found is that, you know, lots of our core content types have worked really well, and also some of the more experimental stuff. And this time presented us with a moment to continue doing well. And some of our core content is video content, for example, that has done really, really well. But also think about more online interactive content. So, for example, we did some online interactives around our Raphael cartoons, and people absolutely loved that. We probably put more emphasis on that than we might have done in the past. So it was a chance to do some experimentation, but also to remember to stick to what we're really good at, and to produce compelling film content, because after all, that's the most sort of universally accessible form of content that we can produce, and it's important for us to make sure we're keeping as widely accessible as possible, especially at a time like this.
Chinran, I've always been of the opinion that culture has quite a significant role in pushing technical innovation forward. But I think that's a reciprocal relationship, and I think technology has got a role in pushing culture forward as well. I'd like to kind of finish before we go to audience questions, just to get your thoughts on that, and also explaining why HTC Arts exists in an ecosystem that it needn't. You know, you've obviously made a bold decision to have that involvement in culture, which is a great one, and just to know where that came from within the organization.
Yeah, I think that's such an important question, because when we think about our collective future, it would be quite disappointing if it's a technology saturated world without art, or art experiences without technology, which makes up a lot of the everyday reality that we live in. And I think for us, it's always important when we think about partnerships between art and tech, it can't stay on the level of museums needing funding or tech companies needing PR. And, you know, as we work with leading museums such as the V&A, I think we're all actively thinking about how to bring strategic value to both sides that's important to each other's future, both respectively and collectively, and about bridging the values and learning from each other about these different definitions of innovation that is, you know, really important for us to understand from each other's point of view and learn from each other. And, you know, to answer your question about why Vive Arts exists, to be honest, arts and humanities are at the core of HTC VIVE's founding mission. And for us, when we work with museums, we are connecting with the history of innovation and with the importance of storytelling and imagination, which is at the core of why you know, we are invested in VR as a technology and as a part of our future realities.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you can really sense the kind of collaboration and partnership that you've had and the benefits of that. And, you know, having worked in this area myself, I know how important it is that those relationships exist, and they do need to be symbiotic. Trying to do it on your own is just not going to work. We've had a number of questions in, and there's two that I think we've probably got time to focus on, because I think we've got about 3 minutes left. The first is a question about, have we reached a tipping point in terms of large-scale audiences being able to access VR in a setting such as this? I think the question is about, are we now at a point, you know, it's been quite difficult often for audiences to get to the technology, but now we're at a point that it's more evident and available. Do people see this as a tipping point?
I think so. With the SKUs and the headsets becoming smaller, more compact, and the technology in them, for example, hand tracking, as we've used in this experience, it means there isn't the need for controllers. So just generally, the comfort of it and the simplicity of it is becoming a lot more accessible. So yeah, I'd say that we will be seeing this in more and more exhibitions as we see going forward. So yeah, I think it would be great, and it's, you know, it's there to complement, not there to replace. It's there to become part of the exhibition itself.
Very good. And then I'm going to come to you, Kati, for the last question. We've got about 2 minutes left to answer it, which is the dirty secret of VR cultural experiences that they work best in cultural locations surrounded by the theatre of the place, rather than plunging into a VR world from the viewer's front room?
I think that's such an interesting question. I think they're very different experiences, and I think we've deliberately designed two different experiences, one for the at-home audience that are coming in without that additionally immersive backdrop of the V&A in the exhibition, and one that works well in the context of the exhibition. And I think it's not about it working better in either scenario. We just need to design around those parameters and design for those environments, and really think about the context in which people are entering into those experiences to do the best job we can in terms of preparing them for what's about to happen. So the narrative journey that takes you into the VR experience in the exhibition is designed in a very different way to you being at home in your living room. There's not one's not better than the other. They're different, and we've accepted that difference to face into that, to do something that's right for each of those contexts, I hope.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think also what's come out of this past year is recognizing the importance of audiences at home and the desire for them to consume the culture that we present there as well. And that's not something we can leave behind with COVID. That has to be a new form of engagement. I'd like to say thank you very much to all the panelists. Thank you for listening to us, and see you at the V&A.
Please all come to the exhibition, and thanks for tuning in today. Thanks. Thanks, Toby, as well.